Hello, I'm Enzo, and you're not seeing things. The game is in black and white. This is Skyfactory 5, which is what I'll be playing today. Every Skyfactory version has a different gimmick to it, and 5 is all about colors. You start out in monochrome, or grayscale technically, and you slowly unlock different colors through various methods throughout the run. At first, I wasn't crazy about this concept, but it did grow on me over time, and eventually I was like, alright, I have to see how this pack works, and I will admit, it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It is super interesting to see just what's made out of Minecraft's 16 different colors. This whole mechanic is incredibly well done, and I really do like it now. The start of the playthrough is the classic tree, and of course, dirt block at the bottom. But I was playing this super slow since it's very hard to tell what is what at the beginning. You seriously need some colors to get your bearings. The block indicator at the top is very useful for being able to differentiate the blocks. I can't say that word for some reason. Differentiate, whatever. I also get a whole different set of starting items for this pack, which is interesting. I get a crafting table on a stick, yet it's not a normal crafting table. It actually has a limited amount of recipes in it, so I'll have to figure all of those out. There's also 2 tool templates, which I will be using later. There's some food, and of course the quest book. The second item is just some lanterns for light a little bit later on, but those are completely unnecessary for this pack. And I'll explain the third item later because it kind of annoyed me. From the tree, I'm getting all of the classics: saplings, logs, some colorless apples, and silkworms. Since these are the only starting items I get, obviously I'm going to need all of them to do any progression. One very important thing to note, and what I read here, is that mobs don't actually spawn in this pack. Naturally, at least. Even passive mobs, animals and stuff, don't spawn on grass or anything like that. Apparently the whole mechanic is some sort of challenge gates that you have to beat, and then you can spawn the mobs. It's gonna be quite a while before I can get to any of those though. Again, I need to focus on actually starting out here. The crafting table on a stick is very helpful for making some basic stuff, like slabs, which I always use to make a little starting ring so that I can harvest all of my tree and not lose any drops to the void. But this tree, unlike some other packs I've played, has been very generous with its resources. I very much appreciate that. After completing my platform, I was going completely insane trying to figure out how to grow this stupid tree. So, I was trying the classic spam shift to grow trees, which is normal for most mod packs like this, but it just wasn't working. Nothing was happening. Apparently, the third item in my hotbar is a watering can. Yeah, that makes things grow faster. I wish I would have known that a long time ago, but now I know, and I can finally start growing this tree again. On top of that, we do have the ore excavator mod in this pack, so when I'm holding a tool in my hand, and I hold the key that I bound it to, which in this case is caps lock, that's why I'll type notes in uppercase sometimes, but this lets me harvest the entire tree, and it teleports all the resources to my inventory, so I never lose anything to the void, and more importantly, it speeds up how fast I can harvest trees. The most fascinating thing is that this actually gave me the green color. It's weird because I didn't get green from the first tree, but I get green from the second. It must be something coded in, I guess. I also have to say, it makes the world look very weird with only green. The green thing I got was a green apple, which will be helpful to start unlocking more and more colors. I crafted a normal crafting table, but unfortunately these colored ones aren't normal. I was getting mad at using the crafting table on a stick because the controls are really weird in it, and I'm not used to them, but the normal crafting table is literally just the same thing, but with more recipes. So I'm gonna have to deal with this for a little while. I accidentally made 2 crucibles when I was planning to make a crucible and a barrel. Crucibles are what I'll be using to make water, and a barrel would be preferable so I can start making some dirt and actually doing some stuff. But the water will be nice. After harvesting a few more trees and making the correct barrel this time, I finally have access to dirt, which in turn unlocks the brown color. Awesome! This makes the sky far uglier than before, but it is what it is. It'll probably change soon enough once I get my next color. Eating dirt, oddly enough, gives me brown dye. So I guess that's how you get your first brown dyes. And I'll also note at this point, if you ever run out of food, you can actually just eat any dye in this pack, which is very interesting, but I have tons of food options available throughout the entire course of this run, so I won't have to do that. But still, it's a thing, I guess. Another interesting thing to note is that all of the colored trees are like different types of trees. The brown trees can spawn with cocoa beans, which is neat, but these are more like normal oak or birch trees. Unfortunately, none of them will grow to the super massive oak trees, but later on you'll see stuff like the mangrove trees, the tall jungle trees. Well, I think that's pretty much it, but still, certain saplings do grow into certain different types of trees. It took me a while before I realized how to make a normal crafting table, but before that, I learned that you can turn apples into the actual dyes, so that lets me get green dye, which will let me turn one of the colorless saplings, or any other sapling I guess, into a green one. Besides that, I infected the leaves so I can get some string, which gave me the color white. Awesome, I'm making really good progress. I don't have any use for string or white just yet, but again, it is necessary to do any decent amount of progress here. Even though brown trees were the ones to grow cocoa beans, green trees are the one that actually grow like jungle trees. So yeah, I'm gonna have to climb all the way up there and remove the leaves first. Because another thing to know about these trees is that the leaves don't decay like normal trees do. You have to mine them all up yourself. This is when I decided to quickly figure out the silent tools. Well, tools. They're pretty simple. You just put a few materials in with the pattern and you get the part. I think this can be done for most resources in the game, but I didn't use it that much. I made some tools and armor, but again, we're nowhere near that just yet. Since I've been using ore excavator, or vein miner as I always like to call it, I don't actually need these tools. You literally just need to have an item in your hand and use the hotkey to actually remove all the blocks. It does take up quite a bit of food though. I also happened to get my first gateway, or I call them gates, from this tree. This is a green zombie gate, but again, I'm nowhere near ready to start fighting these things yet, because they are actually pretty tough. Well, at least some of them are. It depends on the mob it spawns, but I would like some decent armor and weapons before I fight anything. Even though I didn't use the sickle, I actually do need the axe, and that is to strip logs, which this time isn't purely decorative. It actually gives me these template boards, which have all sorts of uses. As a matter of fact, they're pretty integral to this pack. Besides making more of the part templates to make other tools, I can actually use these on top of a campfire, which since I don't play much modern Minecraft, I completely forget about all the features. But campfires can actually cook food for completely free without a furnace, which is very nice. But more importantly, I can use these templates on the campfire to make ash. Ash will let me get cobblestone and actually unlocks gray dye. It took me a while to figure out that you can make torches with dye and just a stick, and that's how you're intended to make your first campfire. That took me a very long time to figure out, which is a little embarrassing. But again, this is my first time playing this pack, and I have zero knowledge about it. With the campfire down, I meant to place the template boards, but I placed some logs first to start getting charcoal, and that actually unlocks black. So I did get black before gray, but again, all colors are absolutely necessary here. Once the template boards are done cooking, I get gray, which again will give me ash and gray color, but more importantly, gives me the option with 4 ash to make a single piece of cobblestone. This is going to take quite a while to get any decent amount of cobblestone going, but you have to start somewhere. I did a ton of expansion when it comes to my base. I made a larger platform, created a ton of resources, and more importantly, got a furnace, which gives me the option to cook some stuff into orange versions. If you guys didn't know, which I don't think I've really said before, but orange is actually my favorite color. I don't know, I just love how cool it looks. More importantly, I can turn this apple, again, into dye, which lets me dye the tree. It doesn't make sense that just getting an orange apple doesn't unlock it, but that gives me an orange tree and a bee's nest. Well, that's gonna be a slight issue. I can technically just keep growing trees, that's not the problem, but I'm going to accidentally punch one of those bees eventually, so I'm gonna have to deal with them at some point. The main issue is I have no good armor and no good weapons, so I think the bees are gonna win here. Needless to say, I think I hate bees. I think this is also a good time for a not the bees reference. I was trying to figure out the gravestones too, but it actually gives you a key to unlock your gravestone, which is pretty nice. It also gives me a copy of my head, which is almost like insult to injury. It's a trophy of my death. And I got a few comments about it in my last Minecraft video, but yes, the skin I'm using is Kashino from Azure Lane. She is my favorite Azure Lane character. It took me literally half an hour to figure out that you can craft a wooden bucket using logs. I tried planks forever, I was looking everything up in all the menus, I just couldn't find it. Now that I have this though, I can transfer water from one of my crucibles into an actual barrel. This will let me make clay using sand and also gives me the blue color. And of course it spawns rain, because why not? I don't need the water now, but it's gonna give me water anyways. Naturally, I went to build an infinite water source when I realized that I have to build my 2x2 using solid blocks, because this is modern Minecraft and water logging exists. That feature will annoy me many times throughout this run. Even though I understand water logging and it makes sense, I just forget it exists because I'm used to older mod packs. Guess I'll have to get used to that for the next run I plan on doing as well. It feels weird creating clay out of sand instead of dust. Like, dust literally has no uses in this pack, but that gives me a light blue now. Awesome. I'm getting quite a few colors, but we still have a ton to go. Since I don't really have a clue what I'm doing currently, I'm just following the objectives in the book. I've had orange trees for a while now, but I didn't get the orange color unlock. And when I picked up a bucket of lava, I got it. I also got set on fire, and my wood bucket got burnt up. That makes quite a bit of sense, especially because I don't have iron to make an iron bucket just yet, but still, that's rude. Either way though, I now have obsidian, and I've gotten a ton of quests done now. Silent gear is a whole lot like Tinkerer's Construct when it comes to tool building and everything like that, and is the main intended way for you to make all of your gear. I don't know much about it, and I haven't seen all the modifiers, so yeah. And I barely used it in this pack. Maybe another time I'd have to do a bit more research into it, because I think it could be neat, but I didn't have to upgrade my tools too much in this run. I only really need a pickaxe to pick up blocks that I place down. It's not like I'm mining ores or anything like that. One of my major issues with this pack is that I know almost nothing about it and all of the mechanics. I've been trying to make a cobblestone generator, as you can see here, but let's just say it never worked out. I could have gone with the classic water and lava trick, but I was trying to automate it, and I had no clue how. Way later on, I did look up a video and figured out how all the mechanics to make it work, but let's just say this one failed horribly, and the lava actually turned into ash because of rain. So that sucks. I wasted a lot of time making all the cobblestone for this. Alright, I think it's about time I actually explained one of the core mechanics of this pack. You can use dyes of different colors to make different things. Way earlier on, when I said uranium fever, well, I was discovering how to make uranium, and the fact that this mod pack revolves a lot around reactors, which if you've seen my previous mod pack runs, you'll know I love nuclear reactors. The main issue right now is that I still don't have all the colors I need to actually start making things. That is, until I made andesite. Yes, I should have figured that's one way to unlock the other colors. This has taken me an unreasonable amount of time to figure all this out. Because you see, you can't just combine like white and gray dye into light gray dye. You actually have to unlock it in other ways first. Now that I've unlocked light gray, I can make it very easily, or just grow the trees that I need. Light gray dye also gives me access to start making iron, which is a pretty crucial step in progress. You'll see me looking up the recipes for a lot of the basic resources later on, but it's pretty easy to guess like what dyes you need to make certain resources. For example, iron just requires 4 light gray dyes. Extremely simple. Other resources, especially later on, and the most rare stuff like diamonds, take several dyes. It's only 2 different types for diamonds, but still, I think it's like 7 cyan and 1 blue or something like that. So you're going to need a lot of dyes to make resources, especially later on. All this time later, I've finally gotten to making an actual cobblestone generator. You see how much cobblestone I've made without the generator, but now I'll truly have an infinite source. It's pretty interesting how it actually works. You have to make an infinite water source first, that's simple enough, and then you use these fluid hoppers, which are just bricks on top of wooden hoppers. Wooden hoppers just take slabs and chests, so extremely cheap. The fluid hoppers go into a stone barrel. On top of the stone barrel is a piece of lava. That's why I've encased all this in cobblestone. With this extremely simple setup, I get infinite cobblestone, and it's super fast too. Since I still have no clue what exactly everything in Silent Gear really does, I decide to make some iron armor with it. Again, these are super cheap. All you need is the templates and then the same amount of resources that you'd normally use to make the armor. In this case, since I've been harvesting a ton of light gray trees, I'm making a full set of iron gear. This is because I want to start attacking those gates and getting some mobs. Again, I'm not sure what it does, but I did see the ability to add a lining to your armor, and I thought, well, that has to do something decent, right? So I made some lining with some wool that I have because of the silkworms from earlier, and I have a fully lined set of iron armor in the end. Now I just wish I knew what it actually added as a bonus. I should have compared it to the normal set of iron armor, but oh well, I didn't. And it's about time I've gotten to fighting the gates. I don't have that many gate pearls, so I'll go with the zombie. And they work best when you place them in a wide open area. I went for the normal one because there is the Titan version. The Titan version is literally infinite waves that obviously get more difficult as it goes. The normal ones only have 4 waves, but the enemies still get harder with each wave. The gates give you a ton of dye, which is nice, and once you beat it, you actually get a trophy of whatever mob you killed. The trophy at the end lets you toggle spawning of the enemy, which again, by default, is off for everything, but when you turn it on, the mob will spawn based on its type. If it's an aggressive mob, like these zombies, the light level has to be extremely low. But if it's passive, like a pig or sheep, then it can spawn in high light levels. I think it is a super cool mechanic. It's going to be very annoying to deal with all of the mobs that I'm going to need, but it is certainly interesting. I guess I should also mention the modifiers. I don't remember them all, but it is health, damage, and armor. You see, the health modifier is an issue in of itself, but the armor makes it way worse. I think like the armor scaling is truly what makes the highest levels of these things so insanely difficult, because they can tank way more damage than just getting more health. Because armor is a damage reduction, which means you deal less damage, plus they have more health. Oh, not to mention the fact that the damage scaling they get goes crazy. You'll probably see that later. I also decided to try out the woolly cow gate because I didn't know what the Titan ones did at the time. That's when I realized that these are the infinite ones. The woolly cows gave me something awesome though. Pink, because you know, raw beef, that's pretty nice. I don't know what other ways the game intends for you to get pink normally, but I will absolutely take this. The cows also give me a bit of wool and leather, which are all insanely helpful. I'm gonna kill these cows for a little bit, and the only way to cancel a Titan gate is to just let the timer run out. So I built up and hid for a while and waited for the cows to despawn. One final note is that if the mobs get knocked off the map, for example, they will teleport back to the gate so you can kill them. However, with the Titan ones especially, there are a ton of conditions where the gate will just disappear. Like if mobs get too far away, if they disappear besides the player, or being killed by a normal source. My best example for this is actually creepers. If creepers blow up, well, yeah, there goes the gate, which is incredibly annoying. Out of all the mobs, here is literally the most worthless gate in the game. Snow golems. Yeah, they literally cannot deal damage because they have no melee attack, and their snowballs also deal nothing. It's worthless to farm them besides dyes. I mean, I guess that is one use for them. But more importantly, they actually drop snow, which at first I thought was useless, but I did pick up with a shovel a bit later on. As a matter of fact, this snow came in very handy way later on. So, alright, they aren't completely worthless, but they don't have many uses. After clearing out a few more gates, I'm just losing my mind attempting to figure out how to get new colors, because I need new colors to progress, and I decided to do some farming. Go figure, wheat is considered yellow. Well, actually it makes quite a bit of sense, but man, I didn't expect wheat of all things to give me yellow. Well, that's a huge help because now I can get yellow dye and actually get some more stuff done around here. I've been composting a ton of dirt this whole time, and grass seeds I believe are just green and brown dye, so that's extremely simple. I also got some beetroot seeds from the grass, which gave me a similar idea to wheat. And of course, I was right here as well. Beets gave me red dye. This is annoying because I wish I had known this sooner, but also amazing because this gives me a whole lot of progress options. I got a squid gate from harvesting some blue trees, which I forgot to mention, you get blue saplings by tossing any other sapling into water. But here's the thing I did not expect. The sea enemies have tridents. That's interesting. It also appears that their tentacles are far more animated than normal. I have no clue what mod does this, but it is both interesting and terrifying at the exact same time. The squids aren't the best example, but the ghast and endermen are just weird. The squids were also nice because ink sacs do come in handy a bit later on, and of course the one stack of blue dye that I get from beating the actual gate. I tried for a bit longer to see if I could get any other seeds, and the only other seed I can get anything from is eggplants. The color? Well, obviously purple. That's nice. The more colors I get, the more difficult it's going to be to get, well, the last few colors, and that is one of the major issues I'm facing currently. Since I have access to all the materials necessary, I decided to make a pulverizer and a simple combustion generator. This lets me get some very basic industry down. And the pulverizer is awesome because it lets you pulverize like apples and in this case eggplant down into dyes where you get more dyes than usual. It's also interesting because this version of the pulverizer has a catalyst slot. So catalysts increase the normal and bonus output and I think can decrease power usage and also speed the machine up, which is super neat. I really like this addition. You'll see me using it a ton later on. One of the last things I tried was bone meal in my little farm area, or in the water. This gave me seagrass, which in turn lets me get lime. That is amazing. Since I'm guessing all of you weren't counting, and trust me, I wasn't either, I only need one more dye, and that is cyan. Unfortunately, cyan is the most annoying to get. I spent an unreasonably long amount of time trying to figure out how to get cyan dye. Alright, so I'll explain what you need to do to normally get the cyan unlock. So apparently what you're supposed to do is actually pulverize, I think, tin or silver ore, and there's a chance to get the byproduct. I don't remember how to pronounce it, but pretty much that byproduct is what lets you unlock cyan dye. In the achievement tab, I think it's called advancements now, I'm going to call it achievements, it shows you a huge list of items that you can get to unlock whatever dye. The only one I could figure out how to get relatively easily, because everything else is pretty much impossible, is oxidized copper. However, oxidized copper takes an insane amount of time to fully oxidize, so that's literally what I'm going to be waiting, I don't know how long. Also, the redstone acid is only for machinery. I was hoping it would do something, but no, I just had to let the block of copper sit. Another neat thing I got is Infernium essence from harvesting one of the lime trees. Or lime-dyed trees, I guess. This is pretty great because this will let me start my mystical agriculture journey. I even tried farming guardians from a guardian gateway to get the trophy and then spawn them, but again, I had zero luck with them actually spawning, or more importantly, dropping anything. One mild issue with the gates is that the mobs they spawn will not drop anything, unless they are Titan gates, the endless ones. So yeah. And remember when I was saying earlier about the special types of trees? Well, magenta is one of those. I don't actually know what the vanilla equivalent is. It might be mangrove. I think those are insanely big trees like this. But yeah, that's how they grow here. But that's what magenta grows into. It gives a ton of leaves and, more importantly, a ton of wood, which is very nice. The copper is still oxidizing very slowly. One thing I didn't get any good footage of is the fact that the main screen actually gets more colorful as you unlock all of the colors, well, in your most recently played world. Still, I think that's a neat feature. I really like seeing all the new colors being added. Earlier I said this took 30 minutes. I think that's an understatement. It took at least a few hours. But as another slap in the face, I need a higher level pickaxe to actually mine this. Alright, I get my pickaxe is wood, but still, really it can't mine a copper block? Maybe this orange wood is like weaker somehow. Who knows? With that, at long last, I finally have cyan. That gives me all 16 colors to work with, and I can truly get started with the run. Yes, that was just the beginning. Since my storage is an absolute mess, I mean it always is, I decided to sort my chest into all 16 of the different colors. Man, this is one of the best things about having all the different colors. Every single item is labeled with the color that it is. That makes sorting everything so much easier. There's also a mod in here that adds like this quick stack feature, and I was thinking it was going to be just like Terraria, but let me tell you, it is nothing like Terraria's. This quick stack is garbage. It doesn't even create a new stack of items if it fills up another stack. It is like really bad. And the loot bags that the trees drop, which have the gate pearls, it just stacks those to the same chest. It can't actually tell which color they are. So yeah, very bad feature. I like the idea of it, but they clearly haven't seen how Terraria's works. Terraria's is perfect. Besides the apples and the pulverizer, one of the main ways you're intended to get dyes is with water. Now, there are a couple ways to do this. Either dye the water with whatever dye you want, and then throw sand in it, or you can actually put water on top of a dripstone. Now, I made a setup for this later on, but apparently you don't need dripstone blocks, you need the pointed dripstone. It can even just be cobblestone as the block between the water. The dripstone is like gray and brown dye, I think, and to make it pointed, you have to throw it into a stone cutter. So it's easy enough. The next thing I'm planning to make is a printer, and I really wish I'd remembered about this way later on, because that would have saved me so much trouble. Well, this is the intended way to craft most things, but I used crafters from other mods, and that's probably why they all sucked in the end. That makes a bit more sense now. Anyways, the printer lets you create resources by inputting the correct combination of dyes, or if you insert RGB dyes, it creates just a whole variety of resources. And that's what I plan to do, since RGB dye is really cheap to make. It's either red, green, and blue dye, or like printers, it's like magenta, cyan, lime, and black, I think? But yeah, with either of those two dye combinations, it'll create a bunch of resources from, well, a large list of them. I spent a ton of time in different resources trying to get the printer to work. I've even made some stuff for Flux Networks, which will come in handy later. I even restarted the game. But I think the whole reason it wasn't working is because the generator is weird and you have to have fuel in it and it has to be running for it to transfer power. Which makes zero sense to me because that's not how they work in most mod packs. Yeah, this mod pack is very derpy like that. And as you can see, once I input the RGB blocks, this is just 9 dye, it's creating blocks of resources. That is beautiful. And I won't need some of them, like the andesite, granite, and diorite, but everything else will be useful eventually. This is nothing too crazy, but I use the classic waterfall trick to make a platform below my main level. I'm going to be using this quite a bit later, but I just wanted to have it for now. One thing I always like setting up in mod packs is some form of obsidian automation. This is just because you never know when it's going to come in handy, and it's always super useful. For this example, I'm using a campfire underneath a crucible, which flows into a stone barrel, and I can just place a bucket of water on top of the stone barrel, a hopper underneath it, a chest, and boom, automated lava. The crucible only has a multiplier times 7, and the maximum is times 8, which is a little disappointing. I'm still used to compact claustrophobia, where you can get multipliers in like the hundreds, or I think there's like the over 1 or 2,000 multiplier with the, well, I forgot what element it was, but yeah, with the radioactive blocks. I really missed that. That was awesome. Ever since I unlocked cyan dye, I've been able to make diamonds with I think I said earlier, but 7 cyan dye and 1 blue dye. With this, I'm upgrading a bit of my gear. My sword is my largest priority if I want to do any more of the mob gates. But my pickaxe, axe, and shovel will also see upgrades because tools are always important. A bit later, I finally got all the diamonds I need to upgrade my armor as well. That's very nice. Another thing I want to mention is, have you guys noticed it always seems to be raining when you play Skyfactory? I don't know what it is about all the Skyfactory packs, but it is just raining 24/7. I don't know why. Every so often I would just disable the weather noise because it's, well, annoying me. One of the trophies I recently got is incredibly dangerous. Well, at least for the top middle of my base. These are blazes. Blaze rods have several uses. You've got brewing, blaze powder has all sorts of recipes, including Eyes of Ender, and blaze powder can also be used as a catalyst in the pulverizer. I've been using flint when I get some, sometimes, and it provides a small boost, and I learned later that gives a crazy good speed boost. It's going to be a while before I get serious about getting into mystical agriculture, but for now I wanted to make an Inferium furnace so I can smelt things just a bit faster. Since I've been getting a ton of gates from farming all of the red, green, and blue trees, I decided to try and make this little setup to automatically farm mobs. It doesn't work the best, especially as their health gets higher and higher, but it works a little bit at least, and this will generate me some extra dyes, which will be nice. The only issue is that the squids have a tendency to keep throwing their tridents at me no matter where I am. But I'm just glad this works. It was more of a proof of concept when I built it. To get some more progression going, I wanted to make an alloy smelter. You see the main issue here? I need dark steel ingots. Well, this is the full alloy smelter I wanted, but I'm actually going to need like a basic alloy smelter first instead. I also need grains of infinity to make the machine frames for these things, but thankfully if you have a flint and deep slate, which trust me, the deep slate is insanely annoying to get, in your hands, and you shift right click obsidian, that's how you get the grains of infinity that I actually need to make the alloy smelter. And then the Ender IO machine frames. Who would have known? The deep slate that's almost entirely useless in the base game is one of the most necessary components in this mod pack. Because of course, besides needing it for the grains of infinity, I need it to actually make the basic alloy smelter. I'll be back in a long time once my printer actually prints the deep slate I need. Another small issue I've been having with this pack the entire time is it crashing. And no, it's not my computer this time. I guarantee you it is this mod pack. Something about it, some sort of graphic setting, I'm not sure, but it's something about this pack specifically. I'm not even joking. I have 48 gigabytes of RAM dedicated to this pack, that I can take up. Obviously, it's never using that much. So I lowered all of the settings by quite a bit, and that seemed to do the trick. As much as I like having everything at max for all games, well, especially with Minecraft, you literally cannot tell the difference. So there's that. So this is when I decided to try out the dyed water to convert sand into blocks of dye. This is one of the ways you can generate dye in this mod pack. This is also before I learned that you don't actually need the dripstone blocks, just the pointed ones. Either way though, it was a great learning experience because this does work. The only issue I have is I don't exactly know how to automate this properly. Funnily enough, when I was looking at some stuff after I finished up most of this pack, I did see how other players did it. Not using the dripstone method, I think they actually used the dye water and all the hoppers to set it up automatically, but still. I have a few ideas of how this could work, but they all seem just too expensive for what it's really worth. A bit later, I finally printed enough deep slate to finally make the basic alloy smelter. And yes, it only accepts pure, normal deep slate, not cobbled deep slate. I accidentally placed that because of the stupid bridging mod. I mean, it's good early game when you need to bridge out and make your platform, but man is it insanely annoying throughout the rest of the run. I keep accidentally placing things where I don't want them. I know there's a way to disable it, but I only figured that out near the end. The whole reason I've been working on this basic alloy smelter is to make this harvester. I needed solium or solarium, which requires soul sand, which is conveniently just brown dye, and gold. Gold is from yellow dye, just 4 pieces of it. I was really hoping this harvester would actually harvest trees, but no, I'm pretty sure it only does crops. This thing is actually pretty terrible. Since it's from mystical agriculture, I realized, yes, it's only for crops, and you're meant to upgrade it with the different tiers of upgrades from mystical agriculture to make it better. But this thing, again, is bad, so there goes that idea for automating dye production. Since I don't have any sugarcane just yet, I can make paper by using sawdust and water. Sawdust is easy enough to get. You can either use a sawmill, pulverize some wood, or I think hammer it down. Maybe not in this mod pack. That is to create an eccentric tome using some books. This will let you choose any book from one of the other mod packs, so that's an easier way to make some of the guides if you need them. I went with the sushi one, but let's just say I never got into any of the sushi stuff near the end. I also made an enchanting table because I could, but some of the mods in here completely change how enchanting works, which on one hand is good because you can actually get way better and super high level enchantments, but on the other, I have no clue how it works, and I also never got into doing any of that. The good news is that my dripstone setup has been working, and it is a really good source of dye blocks. I think this might be one of the best ways to get dye blocks, but again, automating it might be a pain. I like this setup so much that I actually expanded it to all 16 of the colors. It's a super cool setup. I just don't have the sand to supply every single row. Just yet, at least. Here's one of the first examples of how insane the Titan gates can really get. You see that slime over there? I'm not sure what level this is, but that slime is gonna hurt when I have to deal with it. I built up this wall so that mobs can't spawn on it, but they occasionally do, and then come over to attack me. If I remember correctly from old Minecraft, which it might not still be true, but I'm pretty sure slimes are an enemy that actually scale their damage with their size. I feel like I saw something about someone spawning a max size slime at some point, and it one-shotting because it does so much damage. Again, this might not be entirely true, but if it is true, combined with the damage modifier, well, it makes a whole lot of sense why this slime just one-shot me. Yeah, the slime's one-shot. What am I supposed to do against that? Even with full diamond armor. That was very interesting to say the least. With the resources I currently have, here's the setup my smooth brain came up with. That's using auto placers, and I'll just wait a while, and every so often come back here, harvest all the dyes, let the auto placers place the sand, and then wait to do it all over again. With all the different machines I have, it's definitely not a good idea to just keep using basic combustion dynamos. I'm gonna need way more power, and the solution to that, well, you guys already know, my absolute favorite, big reactors? So this is interesting because this is not big reactors and it's not extreme reactors. I read up on it a little bit and it's like the official port of the original big reactors mod. Extreme reactors is like an unofficial version. And this one is made for newer versions of Minecraft. It's got pretty much all the same stuff. There's also some sort of heat exchanger terminal, but I actually didn't play with that at all. I only used reactors and turbines in this pack. Still though, it's the exact same as the other two mod packs, so if you know how those work, which I mean everyone should at this point, I shouldn't have to explain how these reactors work. They're still very expensive to make, and I'll be using gold blocks, because the one thing that is different is it actually shows you like all the values of everything. I'm not sure what all the terms here mean, but I'm guessing the higher blocks are better. I mean, Ludicrite is literally the best thing you can get, and the one I've been looking at is Emerald because that's what I have the most of, and it has, well, the highest stats for its price. The main difference with this mod pack is that there's no actual inventory inside the ports. You have to have chests or hoppers to import and export anything. Either way, that's 4 kilo RF per tick. That is insane, and way more power than I'm going to need. Eventually, I'm going to lower the control rods so that it doesn't eat up as much fuel and it won't produce as much power because, again, I don't need all of that just yet. Since I am doing quite a few of the quests in this pack, at least a bunch of the early ones, I decided to make this 9x9x9 colossal chest. It is beautiful. I'm gonna store just a bunch of random junk that I'll get from adventuring here later on. I just wanted to make it mostly, again, because I can. I've been working on crafting a ton of miscellaneous items and doing a few gates. Well, I killed more blazes and farmed some orange trees to get some magma slimes for their magma cream. I need this to make magma blocks. And again, this is to get liquid magma. Wow, I don't think I've ever said that word this many times. This liquid magma is going into the solidification chamber to make some crystallized amber. This is pretty important stuff because I want to use this to make some accessories because that's one of the menus in my inventory. There are a ton of accessories from this cyclic mod and they do all sorts of crazy things, and some of them are going to be really good buffs for later on. Besides the crystallized amber, I'm also making crystallized obsidian. It takes the crystallized amber, which is already difficult and expensive on its own, but it requires amethyst and emeralds. However, those are relatively easy to make. The first and most important charm I'm gonna make, an anti-gravity charm. This gives me a very, very basic type of flight. I know the game intends you to get flight in other ways, but this is the earliest way I have found to get it. I'll be working on the other charms later on, but none of them are nearly as useful as this. This is great because now I can do even more stuff around my world. The main reason I made this anti-gravity charm is because I want to start exploring the Nether. So, I tried to make a Nether portal at first, but that didn't work. Why am I even surprised? The way to get to the Nether, and eventually end in this pack, is through paintings. These cost a bunch of various resources, including the brush that I completely forget is in vanilla Minecraft. Like, seriously, who does any of that archaeology stuff? I legitimately forgot it existed after they added it. It also costs some red and orange dye blocks, but conveniently I have quite a few of those already. The painting is 2 tall and 4 wide, so you're going to need some place to put it, and by jumping through it, just like in Super Mario 64, I am now in the Nether. The best part about this is that there are no mobs I have to deal with in the Nether. The downside is that this ring makes me fly so incredibly slow. So, I can be in the Nether, I can loot it, but it's gonna take quite a while. The ring also has trouble getting through 1 wide holes, which is another issue. But I'm gonna be exploring the Nether for quite a while and exploiting it of all of its resources, especially considering bastions exist and they are full of really good loot, without having to deal with those very annoying and difficult piglins. The most interesting part is that gilded blackstone, when pulverized, appears to give netherite. I didn't know this at the time, but this pack has a major focus on netherite, because a lot of high-tier modded items require, well, a lot of netherite. We'll get to that later though. It gets very interesting. So I'll be back once I'm done looting just about everything. Conveniently, in some of the chests, I actually found backpacks, which is awesome because then I could loot even more stuff. And let me tell you, I got so much loot. Granted, a good portion of it is like gold armor with junk enchantments, but there are some valuables in there. Besides all the netherite and gold, there are a few insanely good enchanted items that I'll be showing off later on. For now though, I need to make some more Ender IO machines so I can start processing the gilded blackstone so I can make a ton of netherite. As you can see, I have gotten a ton of raw resources from the nether, but that's not even the best part. I have 2.5 stacks of gilded blackstone just ready to be pulverized into, well, hopefully some netherite, but there is going to be a ton of gold. It's also nice because it's also nice that I have dark steel, because dark steel grinding balls are pretty much the second best, only to the end steel, but I can't make it yet because I don't have end stone. I mean, unless I can craft it, well, I probably checked, but I don't think I can just yet. I'd rather go to the end and acquire my end stone there. I'm still not done pulverizing all of the blackstone, but I already have 17 netherite ingots. Remember, each one of these ingots takes 4 scraps to make, meaning I have around 56 scraps, well, before I made all of these. Still, that is an insane amount of netherite. I used it to upgrade one of my backpacks so that I can go back and continue to loot the nether, because it is a ton of fun. Another thing the nether gives me access to is nether bricks, which will let me make a pyrolyzer. This is the machine alternative to making a coke oven to get coke coal, which is a good source of fuel, but actually kind of a byproduct to me. If you've seen my other runs, you probably know exactly what I'm going for right now. That's the creosote oil. I need the creosote oil to make treated wood. I need the treated wood for, you guessed it, my beloved garden cloche. It wouldn't be one of my runs if I weren't building a garden cloche, would it? The most interesting part about this version of the garden cloche is that it doesn't require wire or nickel plating or even redstone. It actually needs glass, copper ingots, and paper or bamboo. I guess as the filament, but still, I totally expected to need some sort of wire instead. I'm not really complaining, but paper is a little bit annoying to get, oddly enough. I got a ton of comments on my first stone block video about the sink, and I did use it in the second, trust me. I tried it in here, but it's not the same. It doesn't create water, it just stores it. I guess they realized how overpowered it was. So instead, I'm just using an aqueous accumulator. This is the classic one I go to from, well, it's called the Thermal Series mod, which I guess works too. I did make a little farm way earlier to grow my Infernium seeds, but yeah, it's just horrible. That farmer barely works. I've also been having issues with the flux ducts, and I later swapped to the conduits from Ender.io instead. I'm also using some of the blocks from the Flux Networks mod. It's pretty awesome. You can literally transfer an infinite amount of power across, I don't know, dimensions, but infinite distances, I'm pretty sure. Not to mention that there's a flux storage, which I absolutely used. I love that. In total, they're pretty cheap. They just cost redstone and ender pearls and the obsidian that I've been saving up. All in all, I really like this mod. I wish I'd known about it earlier. My first goal for automating dyes in this pack was harvesting trees and then pulverizing all the apples. I really like this system, but unfortunately there aren't many ways to actually harvest trees. So I was trying this forester from Cyclic, but this thing is garbage. It doesn't even pick up any of the products that the trees create. I could do more automation with this, but it's not working out the way I intended it to. The worst part is also how slow this thing is. So unfortunately, this whole system doesn't exactly seem viable. So to distract myself from that failure, I decided to head to the end real quick to deal with the Ender Dragon. And yes, I may have completely forgotten to bring a crossbow the first time around. I don't have an actual bow, but I found this beauty in the nether. That's exactly what it looks like. It just fired a whole volley of shots for the price of one arrow. This enchantment, Crescendo of Boats, is absolutely beautiful. One of my favorite things ever. I've always wanted some sort of automatic bow or weapon in Minecraft, and this is exactly what I was looking for. I'm only gonna make it crazier later on too. Everything seemed to be normal. We've got the Ender Dragon, we've got all the End Crystals. Simple enough, I just have to break all of them and fight the Ender Dragon. But this is not what I was expecting. Suddenly the Ender Dragon is a true boss fight and not just the pathetic excuse that's in vanilla. I'm slightly interested. Now, because of my slow flight speed, I can barely dodge all of the Ender Dragon's projectiles, but I found it super cool. That's just one of the attacks too. The Ender Dragon can literally pick you up and drag you across the map. This is a problem because I can't deal enough damage and I kind of just die, which really sucks. But again, that is due to my slow speed. I did not expect that attack at all, but it is super neat. But the most powerful and annoying attack of all? Well, the Ender Dragon is a female, I mean she drops an egg, but in this attack she drops several eggs and spawns a bunch of baby dragons, which just harassed me and eventually killed me. Yeah, did not expect that one either. It makes me glad that you don't drop all of your stuff when you die in this pack. You only drop non-essential gear, so in this case my arrows. As expected, I did die a few more times, so I decided to upgrade my armor to netherite. So it's definitely netherite gear, but because of the pattern and everything, it shows it as diamond armor. Again, I don't know if it's different from normal or not, but it seems to be the same. All I really needed was that survivability. I've been chipping away at the Ender Dragon's health slowly but surely. And once she's dead, I managed to get a full stack of draconium dust as a drop, which is nice, the Ender Dragon egg, and of course, a dragon heart, which is very important because that's draconic evolution stuff right there. Using some gold, glowstone, and a heart of the sea that I got from killing guardians earlier, I was able to make a wayback charm. This is awesome because now I can just teleport home at will. This is especially useful right now because, again, my flying is so slow. And I'm planning, now that the Ender Dragon is dead, to start exploring more of the End and looting it. The End has some of the best loot in the game, but the Nether's technically better because of bastions and netherite. But still, my monkey brain does love seeing all this shiny loot. In the background, I've had a ton of Infernium seeds growing. The sad thing about this pack is that you only get tier 1 Infernium, but you can actually make some farmland with the higher tiers of essence, and all their names are changed in this pack, so I'm not going to remember them all. But the tier 4, or blue farmland, is what I decided to try out. For a long time, I couldn't tell if it was making a difference, but I can confirm, after seeing the differences, yes, the higher tier farmlands give you way more crop yields than the normal ones. It is actually incredible. So yes, these are a very useful tool. And since I have access to the End, I decided to make the End Steel grinding balls. These give me the most out of my sag mill. And they're not that expensive actually. They cost dark steel, which I can already make easily. It's actually coal powder, which is easy enough to pulverize, iron, and obsidian. The End Steel requires dark steel, another obsidian, and end stone, which is also super easy to get now. Now that I have a ton of essence from the Infernium seeds growing in the garden cloches, I'm planning to make all the dye seeds. There are 16 of these, and of course, you just can't craft them normally. You see, to actually craft them, you need a special infusion crafting system. It requires the main block and then 8 pedestals. Conveniently though, it's all stone, red wool, and gold, so extremely cheap. Just a little bit annoying to set up at first, especially considering I'm going to need 16 different seeds, and they all have different essence tier requirements, but thankfully I have more than enough to make all of the colors. Before I get all 16 of those garden cloches set up, though, I really want to start on a storage system. For this pack, we get Applied Energetics, which after using refined storage a few times, yeah, it's hard to go back to Applied Energetics. Honestly, it's nowhere near as good, especially because of the item type limit in the storage drives. Not to mention, everything seems so much slower and more expensive to make. As usual though, I'm using the inscriber to make all of my basic chips. I had to put a charger up to my power system to charge up the Certus quartz, which I later learned you can just automate with hoppers. That's a way faster system than this. And I threw that charged quartz into water with normal quartz and redstone. This gives me my Fluix crystals that I need to make some of the core components for the ME system. Once I got a few of the chips created, I could actually make some cards, and these cards will let me craft upgrades. Most importantly, the accelerator upgrades. These, as the name suggests, increases the speed of machinery, including the inscriber, which is, pretty important for getting things done in a reasonable amount of time. After a while of gathering even more resources, I managed to make one 4K and two 16K storage cells. Honestly, I think it's only worth it to make the 4K ones. The 16K ones, even though they have 4 times the capacity, they cost 3 of the 4K cells. And the main issue with applied energetics, again, is actually the item limit. So it's definitely worth it to make more smaller storage cells instead of less large storage shells, unlike refined storage. But this is all I have to work with, so I'll have to make do. And finally, here we are, 16 more garden cloches, all 16 colored seeds, and a whole lot more power conduits and fluid ducts to go with them. I also added chests from the sophisticated storage mod, which allows you to put cool upgrades in it, which I will definitely get to later. It's funny because I made these out of acacia wood because I thought it was only working with vanilla stuff, but I didn't know how to make the chest upgrades at the time. I did figure out how to upgrade colored chests to normal ones later on. Next up, I decided to make a mob grinder from Draconic Evolution. I have tons of draconic dust, both from the dragon and my printer, and everything else, well, I have plenty of at this point. The main issue used to be power, but now that I have my reactor, that's no longer a problem. Naturally, I'm setting up the mob grinder where all the campfires were. Honestly, I should have kept the campfires and added this on top of it. That would have worked a whole lot better. But this is going to help me get way further in the Titan waves, which in turn gives me even more dye and awesome mob drops. If any of you have seen my previous community post, well, this will make a lot of sense. You know how I was talking about the attack scaling earlier? Yeah, I just got one shot by a fish. You know the funniest thing here? I'm trying to place down an XP tank to start collecting XP from these mobs, yet I lost 70 levels in this process. Yeah, that is tragic. It's a good thing I didn't do much enchanting in this run, or I would be crying right now. Still though, I can't ever say I've died to a fish in Minecraft before. This is certainly a new and unique experience. A bit later, I decided to upgrade my reactor so that I could actually keep the mob grinder running a bit longer. That thing just chews through power like crazy, so this is absolutely necessary. The only real issue with how much power the mob grinder consumes is that I need to feed the reactor even more fuel. Thankfully, I've been getting a ton of green and gray dye from all those garden cloches. That lets me make plenty of uranium, which I then throw into the pulverizers to get a tiny bit more out of. Since XP tanks do fill up over time, I found some solid XP from earlier, and I used it to make a mold for this XP press. It turns them into like baby jellies or something like that. Anyways, these things can be thrown into a chest and stacked to 64. They're literally just another type of solidified XP, and this let me store tons of XP for later on. I'm not really going to need it, but it will come in handy a few times at least. Also, I have to say, the salmon were nice for dye, but man, their Tobiko byproduct, which is for the sushi mod, is insanely annoying. Even with stacking upgrades in the chest, I still have to throw it all out manually. Since my sag mill is super powerful, I've been using that to grind up a ton of cobblestone down into gravel and eventually sand. The sand I've been throwing into a hopper, which goes into a barrel and turns it into clay. This is automated clay. And honestly, how I should have made a bunch of coke ovens for the Creosote oil earlier, but oh well. For now, I'm going to use all this clay, sand, and gravel to make a ton of conduit binder. Conduit binder is required to make, well, Ender IO conduits. The item conduits are essential, the power conduits, mostly just those two. Ender IO's liquid conduits are absolute garbage compared to pretty much anything else. I've had the Supremium furnace for a while now, but I want the Awakened Supremium furnace. The first issue is that I needed a ton of Solarium blocks, which requires a ridiculous amount of gold and soul sand. Alright, those aren't the worst to get. These pedestals are quite different from the normal ones because you need essence ones and normal ones. But again, they all cost Solarium. Alright, so I have all of these. I have the table in the middle, but it's not working in the end. So you guys want to know the super funny thing about Awakened Supremium? I have no way to get it just yet. Because you see, you actually need something called Cognizant Dust, which requires you to have a special enchantment that you have on a sword or bow, and you have to kill the Ender Dragon or Wither with it. So let's just say it's going to be a little while before I get any Awakened Supremium, and thus my Awakened Supremium furnace. The next major thing I'm working on is from a mod called Hostile Neural Networks. I've seen this mod a few times, but I've actually never used it before. It's not that complicated, which I like, and it's incredibly powerful. Pretty much, you make these two machines and these data cards. You also need this tablet in your inventory to actually record mob kill data. Pretty much how it works is you kill a bunch of mobs that you've scanned, and the more you kill, the more accurate these predictions are. Pretty much it gives a certain chance for the prediction to succeed in the prediction matrix machine or fail. If it succeeds, it gives you data for that mob and actually upgrades the data in the mob data. Okay, I know it's all a bunch of the same words, but still, you get the reward. The reward can be thrown into the loot fabricator to make all sorts of different stuff that the mob can drop. For example, I can get a ton of blaze rod from blaze data. It gets pretty insane, especially with different mobs. You can even get ender dragon data and wither data. The main issue, of course, is killing the mobs to get enough data to even start the process, cause you can't just start it from nothing. You do have to have a certain amount of kills. That's why I built this giant cobblestone platform and wall, because I don't want the blaze fire going back and hitting my base. Well, actually I built it after there was already a small fire, but still, you know. Another neat thing I learned later on is you can actually have 4 data models in the tablet at a time. I'm guessing you can maybe even have multiple tablets. You know, I'm really curious now. I wonder if you can have an inventory full of these things and just farm tons of mob data. I'll get to this mod in a bit more detail later on, because I did depend on it a lot in this playthrough. But after I got that data, I started working on some other stuff. Specifically, trying to figure out enchantments and everything like that. Since enchantments work way differently because of some of the mods in here, I decided to make some extra enchanting equipment. You see, there are enchanters and disenchanters from all sorts of different mods, so I'm going to figure out how I can make the specific enchantment I need. I'm going to be getting that enchantment a bit later. My first goal was actually to use some of the enchantments I've gotten from the End and Nether to upgrade my crossbow a whole lot. Just look at this puppy. Quick charge, multi-shot, crescendo of bolts. That is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in Minecraft. I don't think you can really make a better weapon than that. Well, I guess you can, because I know there's some sort of Kinker's construct for ranged weapons. I forgot what it's called, but this is pretty close, and I love it. Another super valuable model to get is, of course, wither skeletons. I think it's also a good time to mention the more valuable and higher tier the mob, the more power it actually takes to predict the result. Another fun fact, enemies can actually spawn with backpacks, which is very interesting. A bunch of the backpacks I've found have had jukebox upgrades, that's why they're playing music. That was very interesting to hear. But back to the prediction matrices. To actually make the predictions, they require a base. That base is actually super cheap for how broken it is. It requires glass panes, clay, iron, and gold. That's it. Extremely cheap. But again, the power will be your main killer. It also produces dye as a byproduct based on the color of the mob, so I have to clear that out every so often as well. Last thing I wanted to mention, I'm guessing it's something to do with the mod config, but why do all of the mobs I seem to face have afros? I know it's from the hat mod, but what's this dude's obsession with afros? I mean, it's a cool hairstyle and all, but this is a bit excessive, especially when they drop and clog up my inventory because hats don't stack. If you're wondering why I've been farming wither skeletons, it's not for their skulls. Trust me, you can't use those to build withers in this pack. You can only use wither gates or titan wither gates, or the mob data, which is a far better idea. The wither skeletons can actually drop necrotic bones. Well, they're not always called necrotic. I think that's from the original Tinker's construct. Anyways, that lets me make basic heart canisters. Every single one of these I equip increases my health by 1 heart, which is awesome. You put them in a heart amulet, and as I learned later, they stack up to 20 per tier. A big part of this mod pack is getting a ton of extra health, and you'll see just how crazy it can get later on. But even a tiny bit will help out quite a bit, especially trying to farm mob data. Alright, I think it's about time I finally acquire some of that essence to make the Awakened Supremium essence. I made a Supremium sword, which is a major upgrade to my old sword. Now I just need to figure out how to make the enchantment that I need. Well, I may have gotten a tiny bit distracted and decided to make a strength 3 augment for my sword so it can do even more damage on top of the sharpness 5 enchantment I made for it, which by the way is just quartz, lapis, and a book and quill inside of the Ender IO enchanter. Okay, so I didn't realize how long it was until I actually started harvesting the dust I need from the Wither and Ender Dragon. Again, since Withers spawned from gates don't have any drops, well, I don't know how it would work with the enchantment, but I wanted to get the trophy and data. The main issue with the Wither and Ender Dragon gates is that they actually despawn if you don't kill them fast enough. That's why I needed to upgrade my weapons so I can deal a decent amount of damage instead. One of the other things I got sidetracked by was working on the achievement where you grow a piece of sugarcane all the way from the bottom to the top of the world, which I thought was pretty awesome. Now, I wanted to use Snad, which is 2 pieces of sand combined, and it makes sugarcane grow way faster, but I'm pretty sure that would fall through the void. I may have also forgotten you actually need water for the sugarcane. That was a bit embarrassing. The game intends for you to place blocks like this in space using a bubble wand. I tried that for a while, but after looking it up, you actually need a specific enchantment, and since I have no clue how to get villager trading to work, I never got it. I think it's just stupid, so yeah, I just bridged out. I removed all of the enchantments from my crossbow and added it to a Supremium one, but unfortunately it doesn't work on this one. So sadly, there goes my crescendo of bolts. I really liked that enchantment, and it's still on here, it just, again, doesn't work. Either way, the Supremium crossbow did help out a lot with killing the Ender Dragon, enough to get the data and eventually trophy that I actually need. It's the time we've all been waiting for. The most important part of getting essence from the Ender Dragon and Withers is actually Supremium essence. You see, I need Supremium essence to actually make the enchanted book that has the, well, enchantment on it. This thing takes an insane amount of solidified XP and Supremium essence, which both take a very long time to make on their own. But now that I have collected all of that after all this time, I can finally make it, and I'm getting super close to making that awakened Supremium furnace that I want so bad. And with a trophy spawn dragon, well, it seems to work. There we go. I have my dust, and now I can go make some awakened Supremium essence. Conveniently, all of the recipes that use the essence vessels use the exact same 4 essences: light blue, blue, orange, and brown. So that's very convenient. I just have to have a bunch of those always ready to put in there. Finally, I've gotten my awakened Supremium essence. Since 1 block is 9 essence, and each gem and ingot take 2, that gives me enough to make 1 awakened item. Just like the enchantment, let's say it's going to be a little bit before I get that furnace. I keep getting sidetracked, but that's kind of just how this mod pack works. There's an insane amount of stuff to do, and the first one is going to be dealing with the Warden, which frankly absolutely terrifies me. I don't think I'd be able to sleep at night if this were in the game when I first started playing it. Like bro, if Endermen terrified me back when I started playing Minecraft, yet again, I was super young when I started playing. If Enderman terrified me, imagine what the Warden would have done. Why did they add this creature? I mean, to be fair, they had way scarier versions in mind. This is the most tame option, but still. Minecraft isn't supposed to be a horror game. While I was looking at the upgrade for my sword that gives it strength, I saw something very interesting. A flight upgrade for a chest piece. Yes, some of these mystical agriculture augments can only be put on certain pieces of gear, but that flight augment interested me a whole lot because I think it's creative flight, not whatever this anti-gravity ring flight is. And considering it's relatively cheap, you absolutely know I need to get that. On top of the awakened Supremium chest piece being way better than netherite. The other upgrade I made was a health boost upgrade. This costs a ton of essence, golden apples, and wither skeleton skulls. But with this, I can finally stop using that anti-gravity ring. Using some of the enchantment tables, I can remove all of the enchantments from my old chest piece and move them over to this new one. With that, I have a way better chest piece, and most important of all, creative flight. Finally, super fast infinite flight. That is beautiful. I'd almost forgotten exactly what actual flight felt like having to deal with that ring for the longest time. But I am not complaining at all. This will make everything so much faster. My reactor produces quite a bit of power, but it could be more efficient. You see, as cool as reactors are, I really like steam turbines as well, and that's my next goal, to build a giant steam turbine. I'm going to need quite a few resources for this. One of the most important is plutonium. Plutonium is the cyanide ingots, which is technically waste from the normal reactors, put into a cyanide reprocessor with some water. Considering I have water and power right there, that's easy enough. All of the reactor blocks pretty much just take iron and cyanide ingots, so it's pretty cheap, especially for how powerful it can be. Building the steam turbine is the easy part. The hard part is trying to get it to work. One of my major issues with this mod pack is the lack of real technology blocks. Like the thermal series mod is not thermal foundation. I don't have my cryo-stabilized flux ducts. I don't have my pressurized liquid pipes, which means I have almost no liquid transport options. Trust me, I've tried quite a few things already and they just don't work. Yes, I know the fluid hoppers are stupid and they're extremely slow, but it was literally my last resort. Okay, well, not my last resort because that's what I'm doing now. The only other option I can think of to transport fluids between the two is direct insertion. And for the amount of liquid flow I need between the reactor and turbine, direct insertion is absolutely required. And, of course, the most efficient method. I'm guessing there has to be a hard cap at some point, but the liquid transfer amount is likely near infinite. This gives me the ability to generate an insane amount of power from my steam turbine. There's only one tiny issue. I actually generate too much steam. And you see, if it goes too high, I don't know if it explodes or breaks because I've never actually gotten it this high before, but as you can see, it stops generating power at a certain point. Steam turbines are insanely efficient and can generate tons of power. They just have to be tuned very precisely to generate the right amount of power and take in the right amount of steam. It's going to take me a little while to get all the ratios right, but considering I got the ratios right for the steam turbine and reactor twice this run, I was very proud of myself, getting this thing to work with perfect efficiency, generating a ridiculous amount of power for relatively cheap. It's pretty awesome. I made this arboreal extractor to start preparing to make some things from another mod a bit later on. This extracts liquids from certain trees, and in this case I'm getting latex out of a jungle tree. Latex can be used to make plastic eventually, and it's one big thing I've been missing for a very long time now. But now that I know how to make it, it's actually relatively easy. They're pretty cheap to make and you don't need the phytogrow in there. I just put it in there because it actually speeds up production by a whole lot. After a little bit, I managed to collect enough latex and throw it into the latex processing unit to make one dry rubber. One. Yes, that's how pathetic my production is. But this will let me make one plastic and eventually some more useful things with it. I don't know if the logs have to be from a naturally planted tree, but I don't really want to test that theory. I'm also using these fluid transfer nodes that I made earlier. They're actually super neat, but again, their throughput is very limited compared to what I actually needed. I then decided it's about time that I finally upgrade the rest of my armor to Awakened Supremium. I definitely have the resources to do it all, I just haven't had all the base essence that I needed. But now I do. With armor upgrades also comes more health boost, and the other augment that I made was absorption. Now you can't blame me for thinking absorption would stack because health boost does. Let's just say, apparently, absorption does not stack. I thought it would because I've seen hundreds of yellow absorption hearts before, but I guess that's not how those augments work. It's only the health ones that stack. That was a major disappointment, but still, I have a whole lot more health now. And after all this time, I finally decided I have plenty of resources to spare. I think I should give that Supremium Furnace that I've been ignoring for so long some actual love. And there we go. What started the entire mystical agriculture journey is finally finished. Just look at this baby. I forgot the exact modifier, but I think this furnace runs at like 20,000% speed or something like that. I don't know, it's fast. I love fast furnaces. It's just so satisfying to see everything get converted like instantly. Beautiful. This will also come in handy very later because I'm gonna have tons of stuff to smelt over the course of this run. While I was waiting for more latex and pink slime to be produced, I decided to try out some occultism, and let me just say, this is weird and trippy, but also kinda cool. This whole pack revolves around these demons' dream fruit, and the fire you make with it. You gotta throw a ton of different resources into the fire to make things to, well, craft different stuff for this mod. The stone was simple enough, but I was having a difficult time with the wood because for some reason I just couldn't grow the trees that it wants. In the end, it actually turned out that you have to have the third eye effect active while you plant and grow the tree, and harvest it, of course. Only then do you get the special wood that you have to throw, of course, into the fire. You get ashes from that wood, and ashes can be used to craft other stuff. I made a butcher knife to harvest some tallow from large animals, in this case pigs, because they're what I have available. I used the ash and tallow to make this white chalk, and that's a big part of actually getting started summoning stuff with this mod. And guess how all the book materials are made? That's right, you gotta throw everything into the fire first. Using the stone, chalk, and some candles made out of tallow, as well as a few other resources, I can start my first summoning. I thought at first it was bugged because it was taking forever, but apparently I'm just stupid and it really does take that long. Once it's finally complete, I summoned this thing. Apparently he's supposed to be some sort of crusher. I did a ton of reading in this book and I have no clue how you're supposed to get these things to work. On top of that, I'm not a huge fan of magic at all, so I was not interested already, but seeing that this thing would despawn made me completely lose interest. I did get a little bit more into this pack at the end, but I was mostly just waiting for the pink slime and latex I needed to be produced. The reason I need this latex and pink slime is to start making more advanced machine frames. I learned later that you can click the little lock button there to lock in the crafting pattern, so I can just shift click everything into there. It is a bit annoying. I wish it worked more like a crafting table, but oh well. Using the latex and pink slime, I can upgrade a whole bunch of machine frames to make more advanced machines. But this process is going to take a little bit, especially because I haven't made speed upgrades for these just yet. Okay, so you guys might notice something a bit different here. The view looks very odd. I don't know why. I'm not going to lie to you. 5 hours of footage is just this, and those 5 hours are made up of very small clips. So on one hand, that lets me skip quite a bit of the explanation I was going to do, but there's also a lot of valuable stuff that I did in there. I was talking with my dad a whole lot, and I legitimately have no clue what did this, what happened, or why. The only thing I can guess is it was some sort of update by OBS or classic Windows update. Like, look at this. These are not my recording settings. It should not be 720p. It should be 1920 by 1080. Why this happened? Again, who knows? It is insanely annoying because every so often I do check my footage to make sure, but once you think the footage is gonna be good, then of course, that's when it fails. And it's not like this is a one-time thing. This had to have happened over 3 days of recording. That's the crazy part. And in the end, there's legitimately nothing I can do about this either. So I'm gonna cut out most of the footage because it was kind of pointless in the very end, and I'll try to speed run talking about everything else. Yet again, blame Windows, blame OBS. To sum up everything I was doing with the Warden and all of this stuff, I was making a soul laser where you can actually extract souls from the Warden and use it to speed up other machines. I never used it to speed up machines in the end. It was mostly just to see how it worked in the first place. It definitely has a ton of potential, especially with hostile neural networks, but again, the footage all looks like this. I fought the Ghast Cow, which is very similar in battle to like the Wither, but also a Ghast. It's certainly an interesting boss, and the main reason I killed it is so I can actually use its mob data to farm yellow hearts, so I can increase my health even further. Not like you guys can see that or anything. Well, it's a good thing I didn't do all of the Chaos Guardian fight here, but let's just say, without any proper gear, I got my butt absolutely kicked. Yeah, this is one of the worst fights, but we'll get to that later, and in proper quality. I did a ton of Draconic Evolution stuff, mostly upgrading the infusion crafting system so I can make a bunch of good stuff later on. I guess I'll explain this way more later, but in this version, Draconic Evolution only has the chest plate. But it's insanely cool because you can have different modules in here and everything. All of this stuff is so neat. The best part is that I can actually put this chest plate in my accessory slot instead of my back, so I can still have my super powerful Awakened Supremium armor as well. I spent a ton of purple dye to make tons of Draconium, and all of that is to make a tier 8 power core. I wanted a tier 9, but I definitely cannot afford the Awakened Draconium it requires. The worst part about losing this good footage is I made something super cool, which I will go over at the end, but I had to cave and actually use Botania for once. I will admit it was actually quite useful because it can convert ice into packed ice and eventually blue ice if you need it. So I will admit it has one decent feature. Alright, unfortunately this is the only footage of me building this thing. Since I need a bunch of netherite for machines and everything else throughout this playthrough, I had a bright idea to make a netherite factory. This whole system uses a super cool recipe I found from Cyclic. Using the solidification chambers, I can make gilded blackstone, which if you remember from earlier, I can pulverize into netherite scraps and gold nuggets. Well, it just so happens the solidification chambers actually take gold nuggets and blackstone, which is what I needed the ice for with the igneous extruder, and yeah, gilded blackstone goes into the sag mill. Since I'm using the end steel grinding balls, I get a ton of gold and netherite out. It produces way more than enough gold to refuel itself and create gold bars to make more netherite. I'm actually insanely proud of this build. I think it's actually my favorite thing I've built in this run. It's just so awesome having, well, literally infinite netherite. And I can scale this thing up way larger too. This is a pretty small setup. It's just beautiful seeing netherite like this. And here's an example of why Endermen are so terrifying. Their arms waving like that. They creeped me out when I was young. But man, this creeps me out even now. That's just so bizarre. You see, I was farming them in the end before one fell in and actually teleported out, which canceled the gate. I was gonna farm them in the overworld, but of course, it had to rain when I was farming them. I am getting really mad at this rain now. It's not even funny. And since I don't know how to turn off the weather, I'm pretty sure the only way to do it is through some sort of magic mod. I actually had to go turn on cheats and disable weather altogether. I'm not having any more of this rain. I'm sick and tired of it. And last piece of footage with this bad angle. A while back, I made some garden cloches that are growing green and gray dye. This is to make uranium. I threw those into a pulverizer fueled with blaze powder, and this is completely automated uranium. I eventually changed it into blocks, and you'll see just how crazy this setup can get later on. It's nice that the footage returned at this time because this is when I was seriously gearing up to actually fight the Chaos Dragon. I'm changing up the augments on my armor because absorption sadly does not stack. I gave myself luck and speed. Luck, I don't really know if it does anything, but speed is definitely important. Besides that, I changed flight to my draconic chest piece. You can kind of see me wearing it on my top left. It also gives me elytra, which is super fun. I love flying with elytra. And as you can see in the bottom right, I had the draconic chest piece for a bunch of shields as well. Shields are absolutely necessary to win this fight. A quick thing to note about my armor is that I'm actually using the wireless charger from the Flux networks to charge it, and it works in between dimensions, which is awesome. I was originally using the Draconic Evolution upgrade, but after I figured out the Flux network wireless charger did it, I mean, there's no point in having a 3x3 upgrade take up precious space. I also made this staff, which is a combination of the pickaxe and axe. It's a super powerful mining tool and mines everything fast. And of course, my awesome bow. Auto fire is actually a feature of Draconic bows, not to mention all the speed and damage upgrades I have on it. But even with all this gear, I'm having zero luck with the dragon. I have so much netherite that I literally made a beacon half out of blocks of it. This would take an unimaginable amount of time in the base game, yet, okay, it has been a while in here, but still, I can do that. just by AFKing. It is pretty amazing. I built the beacon so I can get regen if I have to teleport back home and slowly regen my over 100 something health. Even though I looked up a bunch of stuff about the Chaos Dragon, it's actually on older versions. You see, this version of the Chaos Dragon is completely different, and you can't attack the crystals straight up. It took me way too long to realize that the Chaos Dragon has to attack the crystals itself. That makes a whole lot more sense, but it's also way more dangerous. Once I learned that, the fight became a whole lot easier. I have to say, the Chaos Dragon is the worst boss fight I've ever had to face in a video game. I mean, ever. It's funny because around the time that I fought the Chaos Dragon, I actually beat Borderlands 1, and that includes the raid boss there, Cromrax. Cromrax was absolutely horrible to beat, yet somehow the Chaos Guardian is worse. Besides the ridiculous damage that he does, even on easy difficulty, it only gets worse as the fight progresses. He spawned a ton of withers. That's pretty bad, but manageable. It's really a shame they don't drop anything. The only good thing about killing these withers, I guess, could be like mob data, but that's about it. The main reason I was having so much trouble with the withers is that the Chaos Dragon actually manipulates gravity. As you see, I'm trying to run and fly, but I just can't. So apparently, the game wants you to do this stupid dodgy run around game. It is just horrible. That's one of my least favorite parts of this fight. And again, if you get hit, well, there goes most of your shield because of the stupid damage. It's a nice thing that I found this menu where you can disable certain sound effects. Most importantly, of course, the wither sound effects. Those were getting really annoying, but also my shield getting hit, which probably wasn't the best idea because that kind of tells me when I'm about to die. But I do have a Totem of Undying, well, module in my armor, but that doesn't really save me all the time. I've been using this strategy of sitting down in a hole, using my bow and arrow to deal with most of the wither's health, and then melee them when they go to their melee phase. Digging down into a hole is also great to deal with the dragon's, gravity attack and everything. And I will totally admit, everything I said beforehand, I did not know about the Chaos Guardian. I still didn't know how the fight worked at this point. I thought it was bugged. That's why I was trying to harvest the crystals in there, but again, you can't until it's dead. It took me a while, but I managed to get all of the crystals down eventually. After that, well, I couldn't exactly tell at the time, but you can attack the Chaos Guardian with a bow. After that, you get to play more of the fun dodgy game, with even more gravity manipulation. It's just even worse than before, somehow. Naturally, like other bosses, the Chaos Guardian does get infinitely more difficult the lower its health. This is a pretty good example because this is just a spam attack. It is almost impossible to dodge. Not to mention how many times I've had to do the other phase to actually get to this point. Like, I know there's zero way I'd be able to do this if you dropped your gear on death. I am glad you keep your gear, but still, this is terrible. Oh yeah, and then there's that attack. You literally cannot survive that laser attack. You might think I'm joking, but I am not. It is a guaranteed death unless somehow you can be behind one of the pillars. That is the only time I've survived it. The most insane part is that I actually have LAN mode on right now. I tried to dodge that attack by going into creative mode. It kills you through creative mode. I'm not even joking at this point. Well, I managed to kill him first, but still. You know how stupid that is? Again, this is legitimately the worst boss fight I've ever seen in my thousands upon thousands of hours of video games. You know you're doing something horribly wrong when you get that title from me. All I'm saying is, whoever created this boss needs to go and play a real video game. Play Terraria's Calamity mod. See what an actual boss fight is supposed to look like, not whatever this garbage is. Because I think the Calamity mod is like a perfect example of boss fights done right. It shouldn't just be instant death, unfun dodging games like this one. And here's the power of creating a setup and letting it run. A chest almost full of blocks of uranium. This is awesome, both because of the scale and because I need uranium for my next project, which is going to be building a 32 by 32 by 48 reactor. That's one of the quests in here and I really wanted to try it because it sounds really cool. One thing that's going to be important for the reactor is some sort of coolant inside of it. This time I'm going to be using Resonant Ender, which I automated pretty easily using one of the prediction machines and of course the loot fabricator. And it's not like this is really overkill either, because I did the math and I'm gonna need 450 buckets of this stuff because half the blocks are rods and the other half is free space. The free space is where this coolant is going to go. Fluid is the only real viable way to go, especially right now since I don't have crazy resource production, which maybe I should get on, but it's what I decided to go with. I made this setup of garden cloches and sequential fabricators to automate some iron production by mixing a ton of white and black dyes to make gray and then light gray because it's more efficient that way. So that gives me iron. There's another setup back here that gives me coal. The coal and iron are the two other things I need to make reactor casings, and eventually the reactor. Another thing I've been trying to get for literally forever now is the electric sheep gate, so I can get some electric sheep because I wanted to try that out. Now, I never did get to seeing how they work, but you actually get them from this white challenge gateway. These are meant to be like an end-ish game thing, but you can probably see just how quickly my bow can tear through all enemies. It's pretty awesome. After that, I decided to upgrade my draconic bow to a chaotic bow, and this thing is so much more awesome. Naturally, I made all the upgrades chaotic as well, even though they're way more expensive. They are far more powerful than the draconic tier. I am in love with this bow. I didn't think about this at all, but I could actually collect iron golem data and use that to get my iron. I believe it gives like 32 iron per prediction result. That is an insane amount. After I got the trophy, I actually built a mob spawner. And the cool thing about mob spawners in this pack is that they can be changed with trophies, and you can actually give them a ton of different upgrades to make them like spawn faster, spawn more enemies. You can even disable the noise that the mobs make. You can actually disable their AI so they can't even move or attack. It's super neat. This is going to make farming enemies a whole lot easier, and probably a potential way to farm some dyes or other resources. I went on to collect 4 full tablets of iron golem data, and then I also got some lava monster data. I've never seen these things before. They are super cool. I love them because they're orange. But the main reason I want them is their prediction result drops 44 coal, which means graphite is not going to be an issue at all. That sped up the ridiculous amount of time it took to make all the fuel rods that go into this reactor. You know, I just did the math, and for reference, it is 21,000 fuel rods that go in there. Okay, it's 20,700, but close enough. Yeah, I didn't think of that at all when I was doing this. I was just wondering how much longer is it going to take. I guess that would explain why it took so long. And this isn't even a max size reactor, by the way. I wonder how long it would take to build one of those. After that, of course, is filling up all of the slots with Resonant Ender. I love the pattern that this thing makes. And now I just have to fill in the rest with reactor casings and, of course, control rods. So I'll be back again. Naturally, during the building process, I misplaced something somewhere, and now I have to go find it and fix it. Thankfully, it was just one block, and I have some spare buckets of Resonant Ender. But with that, this absolute beast is finally done. Getting all the materials to build the stuff was a major problem. You know the true issue here? Fueling it at all. That fuel capacity is ungodly. You guys only saw it for a split second, but that was 83 kilobuckets. That is 83,000 buckets, or ingots in this case, of uranium. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to fuel this for a while, at least all the way. And reactors are more efficient the more fuel they have inside of them. Like, I've been storing up these blocks of uranium for a while now, but even that barely filled it up at all. So I'm definitely going to need a solution to get more uranium. To use all those data models I just created, I built another platform under my second floor. I made it out of purpur blocks that I got from raiding the end cities because I think they look really cool. And I'm very proud of this setup. Except for the garden cloches. The garden cloches did not make anywhere near enough iron and gold that I actually needed. I later imported those instead. But the entire system works off of just one igneous extruder that makes cobblestone. The cobblestone is ground down into gravel and sand. The sand is either smelted and turned into glass panes, or put into a barrel and turned into clay. It's a pretty neat system. It does technically overflow with flint in time, but it's set to reuse the flint as a catalyst for the pulverizers, so it takes a very long time to overflow, and I do check it very often. Again, the main bottleneck here was definitely the garden cloches and not producing enough iron or gold. I built a second Awakened Supremium furnace, and that is to help out with this absolute spaghetti mess of cables. You see, this whole area is dedicated to making uranium. I have mob data from what are called vein creepers, I believe, and vein creepers can come in, you guessed it, all 16 colors. And conveniently, I can use their prediction results to create dye. So yeah, that's yet another way to create dye in this mod pack. As usual, I'm crafting all the different dyes into uranium. The main issue is that these crafters just suck at it. I said at the beginning I should have used printers here instead, but I don't even know if the printer would have helped, because the main issue is it actually overflows with too much green or too much gray. There's no way to set like a limiter on it, and I haven't actually tested to see how the printers work to create stuff that's not just RGB. So again, hugely flawed system. That is one of my major issues with this mod pack. There's so much technology and factory buildings, but it feels like they all just suck. Like, the blocks are all so bad that it doesn't feel like you're supposed to be going these. It feels like this mod pack is more oriented towards magic, considering all the magic focus and mods there are in here, which again, I'm not a fan of at all. Since that setup was running decently for a little bit, I decided to test out the reactor. It's pretty awesome. Even with less than half fuel, it's still running insanely well and generating tons upon tons of power. Once I figured out the power setup, this system generates almost 4 million RF per tick and uses up 1 bucket of uranium, or 1 ingot, per second. Since there are 20 ticks in a second, and 60 seconds in a minute, that's 120 uranium ingots per minute. That is almost 2 stacks. That's insanity. The next major thing I wanted to work on is RF Tools Dimensions. This is a super cool mod, probably one of my favorites of all time, that allows you to make completely custom and crazy dimensions. It's been a super long time since I've actually played with this mod, so it took me a little bit to figure out how to do everything again. I had to kill a bunch of guardians to get the prismarine that I actually needed to make the dimensional shards that kind of, make everything work here. It took me a while to figure out how to make the first dimension. This is like the free one you get, I guess, because I definitely don't have the resources required to make my own just yet. And this is when I remember just how cool this mod really is. The world generation is so neat. And as I've seen from the few worlds I've found, in this mod pack, the worlds can only spawn with like dye blocks and other stuff from this pack. And I'm guessing you can't do anything like blocks of diamond or anything crazy like that, like I usually would. But still, this dye has plenty of uses on its own. Most importantly, uranium. Speaking of uranium, with all of those green dye blocks, making a ton of uranium is possible, and this will help me get closer to fueling up that reactor completely. On top of that, I actually had the dimlets that I needed to create a true custom dimension, a unique custom dimension, and it was just completely full of blocks of gray dye. You can probably guess why. That is the other half of what I need to make more uranium. I'm in love with this mod. And here are 2 of the other dimensions that I made, which I think are also super neat. This one is called Spikes, and I guess it makes quite a bit of sense. It looks like spikes. And the second one is Grid. I thought this would be like the grid block, where each block is, like 1 space apart or something like that. You guys know what I'm talking about, but this is also super cool. Besides completing the quest, I really wanted to see what the RGB block dimension would look like. It's exactly what it sounds like. Any dimension, even the completely full one, like the gray blocks I had earlier, full of RGB blocks. This would be awesome because it would allow me to print so many resources. But for some reason, even though I built it all and got it to work, it just wouldn't power up. I don't know why. I know it's going to have a crazy power requirement, but even plugging a flex point right into the machine, it still won't charge the dimension. I even tried infusing the dimension builder, which reduces the power requirement for it, yet it still didn't work. I tried just about everything too. I made a new machine, I made a new dimension, I tried it on creative, but literally nothing was working. It really sucks because I truly did want to see what this looked like, but since I did create the dimension, technically, that is that quest marked off. For one of the last few things I want to do, and the reason I originally started occultism is because I saw one of the quests was get a demon wife or husband, but you know, I'm going for wife. There are a few more items I need to actually reach that level. Unfortunately, you need the Crusher Spirit for one. Since we already know my thoughts on all of that, well, let's just say the item came my way. I did try to get all the other items legitimately, but skeleton skulls were an issue as well. The summoning ingredients are very cheap, especially for what this is gonna give me. It's also neat because the demon wife gives you some buffs. I think she extends potions and automatically cooks food, which is super neat. The only thing I didn't expect is for her name to be based on the book's name. I don't know if that's a bug or intended, but that's a little awkward. Still super cool though. And she resembles a certain demon I've seen before. If I had to place my bets, I'm guessing her design was based off of Meru the Succubus. Still, pretty awesome. You know, looking at it now, I should have probably turned the beacon into a full netherite one, because I most definitely have that ability right now. But this is pretty much the end of this run. I'm going to do all 16 colors of the challenge gates. Well, except for white, because I already finished white earlier. With my chaotic bow, they're all extremely easy. These challenge gates, I'm guessing, are meant for way earlier than when I did them, because they're just a piece of cake. And the boss at the end has some really good drops that would be great for like early to middle game. So in the end, I did not beat this Skyfactory, which is not good for my record either, because I've never beaten one of these mod packs. You see, it was really fun and interesting at the beginning, but my enjoyment of it went downhill throughout the entire duration of it. That's again because I don't understand what the best way to get all the dye and resources is. Are you just supposed to scale it up like crazy? Am I missing something horribly wrong? I'm guessing it's that. The major focus on magic was, of course, another issue I had with it. Again though, I did love the concept and the very beginning of this run. It is super neat just to see how Minecraft is made up of colors. Another reason I'm ending the run this early is just because of how long this has taken. Now, since I can't seem to find the day count, either I'm dumb or it's just not showing in this version, but there's easily over 100 hours in this run alone. Probably way more than that. It's not worth it to put more time into this video when you see that I could do all the other objectives already. So I am sorry if this disappointed some of you guys, but I built a massive reactor, a full-size steam turbine, that didn't work well in the end, and I got to make this awesome bow, and even better, summoned a demon wife. What more could you ask for? On another note, I filled up the tier 8 power core to like 2/3 of the full capacity, so I was really proud of that as well. The big note I will leave out on is the next mod pack that I found. I haven't actually played it, but I did go into a testing world just to have a look around, and I think it's going to be my favorite pack out of all of the ones I've played, and it's not even close too. So stay tuned for the next Minecraft run I'll do. I guarantee you it will be the most awesome run ever. Anyways, thank you all for watching, I really appreciate it. Especially thank you to my channel members. This is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming, signing out.